Announced policy of January 9th, 2023. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise, and I'm always proud to have this preeminent privilege of standing here and addressing those who are within the chamber, as well as people who may be without. And I rise today still a liberated, unbought, unbossed, unafraid Democrat. I rise today to deliver a special message as it relates to slavery and the Holocaust. But before I get to the message, a bit of housekeeping. I have had persons to tell me that it appears that I'm looking down and that my eyes are closed when I'm speaking. I have no control over the camera angle. I'm looking straight ahead now, and I'll be looking straight ahead most of the time. So if there is some adjustment that the persons who operate the camera can make, I would greatly appreciate it. And thank you very much. I'm very proud of some things that have happened. Just this week on Wednesday, this House passed S-91. That would be a Senate bill. And I'm proud to know that the House passed this bill because this bill was a special piece of legislation. This bill, Senate Bill 91, passed by voice vote at about 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday. And this bill, S-91, was to award a Congressional Gold Medal collectively to 60 diplomats in recognition of their bravery and heroism during the Holocaust. I'm proud that this piece of legislation passed the House. Many reasons to be proud. People who were there to rescue persons and assist persons during the Holocaust, the victims. They ought to be recognized. The Holocaust occurred. It was one of the worst crimes ever committed against humanity. And I'm proud to also tell you that I supported the legislation. I have my signature on that legislation, and that means something to me because I want people to know that when it comes to stepping up and standing out and standing for the people who have suffered in this country and around the globe, I'd like to let people know that I'm among those who are always going to be there as best as I can. I can't take on every challenge, but I want to take on as many as I can, and this is one that I'm proud to say that I am a co-sponsor of. In fact, I became a co-sponsor on March 17th of 2023. The legislation itself was filed on January the 26th of 2023. So some few months later, I became a co-sponsor of this legislation. This legislation, when it was filed, had 13 original persons on it, an original sponsor and then original co-sponsors. And it proceeded through the House, and it was in the House as H.R. 537, H.R. 5337. And on June the 11th, 205 members were on this legislation. I was one of them, proud to say it again. And as one of them, on June 11th, this piece of legislation was passed in the House. It passed the House and then went to the Senate, with 295 members having signed on to it. There in the Senate, it passed on December the 4th, passed the Senate by a vote excuse me, that's the House. S91 passed the House on December 4th, again by voice vote, and I was a member of the persons that signed on to it. I was one of the persons signed on. Now, I mentioned this bill, and I'm proud to be associated with it, but I'm also proud to be associated with another piece of legislation, H.R. 1244, 1244. This piece of legislation would posthumously award a historic Congressional Gold Medal collectively to Africans and their descendants enslaved within our country from August 20th of 1619 to December 6th of 1865. I'm proud to be the original sponsor of this legislation. This legislation has 125 members on it, just as the legislation to recognize the heroes of the Holocaust had 290 plus members. This legislation has to have 290 members or more for it to pass the House. We have 125. This legislation was filed on February the 28th of 2023, about a month after the legislation was filed to honor the heroes associated with the Holocaust. Proud to be on both pieces of legislation. The legislation that we have filed to honor the persons who were enslaved, whose lives were sacrificed, has been in the House now for about the same length of time as the legislation to honor the heroes of the Holocaust. So let's just take a moment and read some of what this legislation that would honor those persons who were enslaved posthumously with a Congressional Gold Medal. I might add that the heroes of the Holocaust received this posthumous honor as we are trying to acquire the same for the persons who were enslaved. Here's how it reads. This is the dear colleague that we sent out to our colleagues here in Congress. Support the historic Congressional Gold Medal for America's economic foundational mothers and children, the enslaved. It reads, on July 18th, 1956, Congress, the House, and Senate awarded a Congressional Gold Medal to Confederate soldiers. And I might also add to soldiers who associated themselves with the Union. However, to this day, Congress has never awarded a Congressional Gold Medal to the over 10 million enslaved men, women, and children who toiled for over 240 years to build the economic and infrastructural foundation of the wealthiest nation ever to exist on our planet. These foundational mothers and fathers of our country labored arduously, constructing our cities, roads, bridges, and wells. They laboriously planted as well as harvested the food that fed our nation. They were the de facto producers of the cash crops that fueled our nation's foundational wealth. These enslaved human beings of African ancestry toiled as slaves without remuneration or recompense. Their humble hands were relied upon for the construction of some of our nation's most renowned edifices and monuments, including the White House, the Capitol Building, and the Washington Monument. In truth, their sacrificed lives provided the genesis of our nation's economic preeminence. These sacrificed human beings, men, women, and children, were the greatest contributors to the American foundational economy. Why would I say they were the greatest contributors? Because for more than 240 years, been estimated to be about 246, but for more than 240 years, they sacrificed their lives. Their lives were sacrificed. They didn't do it willingly. They were forced into slavery. They were enslaved, and it was intended that this would go on ad infinitum. It was never intended at the genesis of slavery that it would be for just a few months or a few years, maybe a few decades, 1 century. No, it was to be forever. Their lives were sacrificed to make America great. So if you're in this country today, regardless as to why you're here or how you arrived, know that you are standing on the sacrificed lives of more than 10 million people who were enslaved. And their enslavement is what has made this country what you see and what you experience today. Let me continue. Their contributions are almost universally forgotten, underrecognized, ignored, overlooked, and undervalued. For these and countless other justifications, this is what I said to my colleagues in the letter that I sent to them, asking for their support. For these and countless other justifications, I am beseeching Congress as a matter of conscience to award a Congressional Gold Medal collectively to the human beings who are the foundational fathers, mothers, and children that toiled as slaves without recompense or recognition for their unparalleled contribution to the infrastructural and economic development of the nation we enjoy today. We've awarded similar Congressional Gold Medals to others. My prayer is that we can do it for them. But we haven't. But that doesn't mean that what we did on Wednesday should not have occurred. I supported it. I believe that people of goodwill should have the courage to support the victims of the Holocaust and the heroes of the Holocaust. And just as I believe it strongly, I believe equally as strongly that people of goodwill, same people that signed on to the legislation so that we could have the vote on Wednesday, I believe people of goodwill, such as these people, can sign on to a bill to accord a Congressional Gold Medal to the enslaved persons, the economic foundational mothers and fathers of the country whose lives were sacrificed for more than 240 years to make America great. Yes, I thank all who have signed on. I have to be candid. I regret that we didn't get 290 signatures so that we could pass this legislation in this Congress. I regret it. It's a painful thing to say. We didn't get those 290 signatures. We made the appeals. And it's a painful thing to say we didn't get 290 people to honor them, just as we honor the victims of the Holocaust, just as we honor the persons who were heroes of the Holocaust. Some 60 of them have been honored as of Wednesday I believe that we can do a similar thing for the persons of African ancestry who suffered here in this country. And I want you to know that notwithstanding the fact that it didn't pass, hasn't passed in this Congress, I don't think it will. I'd love to think that we could push it through now. I don't think we will. But I plan to file it in the next Congress. If it's God's will, I plan to do it and ask my colleagues to sign on to it again. And maybe we'll get the 290. But it is a painful thing to know that we could not get the 290 in this Congress, which means we have to start all over again with the bill to honor the persons who are the economic foundational mothers and fathers of the country. We have to start again in a new Congress next year, a new House, a new Senate, a new president, push forward. And I just hope and pray that the 290 persons plus who signed on to the legislation to accord the Congressional Gold Medal to the heroes of the Holocaust posthumously, I just hope and pray that they will sign on to this legislation to honor persons who were the foundational mothers and fathers. They never received any recompense, never received any remuneration, never received the kind of thank you for your sacrifice. The country has not been fair to them. The Congress has not been fair to them. But I still have hope, and I will still come back and present the bill again. And as long as I'm breathing and I'm in this Congress, I will be pushing for this legislation to pass. And I just want to know that people treat all crimes against humanity similarly. Maybe not exactly the same, but similarly. I just hope that we will treat this crime against humanity the same way we have treated the crime against humanity that we respect as the Holocaust. Two crimes against humanity. One has been treated fairly in terms of what we are doing here in the House. The other has not. But I believe in second chances and third chances. So I close with these words, Mr. Speaker. I think it's difficult for people in this country to embrace what happened to the enslaved because it happened here. It is easy to look through the window of life, and take a principled, conscious, laudable position. It is difficult to look into the mirror of life and be equally as principled and conscious and laudable. It is difficult because when you look through the mirror of life, you're looking at someone else and what they've done. And you can see the horrors and you can speak with fervor about those horrors. But when you look into the mirror of life, you're looking at yourself. And I believe that it is difficult for a good many people in this country and in this House, the House of Representatives, and in the Senate, to look into the mirror of life and speak truth to yourselves about what happened and what we ought to do to show respect for some 246 years of suffering and sacrifice that made America great. I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields. Under the Speaker's announced